Would you like to learn how to interpret the Fool when it shows up in a reading? Stay tuned to learn how. Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Allen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. In this video, we'll be diving deep into the Fool Tarot card. I'll be showing you how I interpreted this card in 3 different readings so that you can more confidently interpret it when reading for yourself or others. We talk about finding a solution to insomnia in reading number 1, whether a man should look for a new job in reading number 2, and in reading number 3, a decision about whether a woman should get married to her fiancé after he has betrayed her. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there's a link below. I feel like the Fool is one of the most important cards of the deck because it's the beginning of the major arcana and represents the journey that we all follow in life. We all start out like the innocent, naive young man in this card and experience many ups and downs in life until we reach the end of our journey, which is card number 21, the World. I love this card because it's about new beginnings, fresh starts, and leaving the past behind without dragging along too much baggage, as we can see by the tiny hobo bag that he's carrying over his right shoulder. This isn't someone encumbered by the things that most of us face: student loan debt, a mortgage, being stuck in a dead-end job because we need the health insurance, mandatory weekly dinners with the in-laws, global warming, politics, or health issues that limit our choices. It's literally a feeling of being on top of the world without cares or concerns. He's living in the moment, enjoying the sun on his face, and not worried that he's about to fall off a cliff and potentially plunge to his death. This is a card that often comes up when you're entering a new phase in your life, taking a leap of faith, or need to stop overthinking things and just move forward. It can also literally represent a trip or a journey of some kind. When reading tarot, context is important, so the meaning can vary depending on where it shows up in a reading. If you want to take an in-depth look at the card's symbolism and history, which I highly recommend, please check out my video about the Fool in the link below. In this video, we'll be looking at 3 readings that contain the Fool. You'll notice that they all look at situations where there is an issue with the status quo and the potential for the querent to take a risk that will move them to a new place in their life. We talk about finding a solution to insomnia in reading number 1, whether a man should look for a new job in reading number 2, and in reading number 3, a decision about whether a woman should get married to her fiancé after he has betrayed her. The first reading is one that I conducted for a family member who I would call Frances in February 2025. Frances is in her mid-50s and, until a few months ago, hadn't had any problems sleeping. She's not sure what caused the insomnia and isn't thrilled about the idea of taking medication, but she's reached the point of being desperate to get more sleep. Before she called the doctor, I volunteered to give her a tarot reading to see if we could get to the bottom of her insomnia. The question was, why am I not sleeping? I just want to add that if this was a paying client, I would have lobbied for her to see her doctor and rule out any physical problems. In hindsight, I should have encouraged Frances to make the appointment too, since this was a new occurrence and nothing else had changed in her life. But this was a family member and not a client. I didn't feel there was much to lose by giving tarot a shot. Card number 1, the Fool, looked at the daily habit that was negatively impacting Frances's sleep. Card number 2, the 8 of Cups, looked at what new habit could support Frances getting better sleep. And card number 3, the reversed 3 of Cups, looked at how Frances could incorporate new habits into her routine. The Fool is the first card in the spread, and this looked at the daily habit that was impacting Frances's sleep negatively. As I said earlier, the Fool is about new beginnings. He's spontaneous, carefree, and uninhibited. He's not someone who adheres to a schedule. So my first thought was that Frances had recently developed a less structured approach to going to bed. She claimed that she had not. However, while she hadn't changed her bedtime, in summer 2024, she'd gotten into the habit, as I had, of watching political videos in bed before she went to sleep. She's a Democrat and got hooked on the excitement of watching Kamala campaign to be president. Then, when Trump won the election, she found herself getting increasingly fixated on the news. So my first recommendation was for Frances to stop watching anything to do with politics on her iPad before bed. This leads me to the second thing that the Fool can represent, which is not being in touch with your body. We can see him at the edge of a cliff, not noticing that he could fall off at any moment. And I wondered if there was anything else that had changed that Frances might not have realized. Did her medication change? Did something happen at work? Did she get new sheets? We scoured our minds, and there were a couple of things that she hadn't thought of. The first was triggered by the white dog in the card. She had new neighbors move in during the summer who had a dog that was outside a lot, including late at night, and constantly barking. Frances recalled that one of the reasons she started watching videos on her iPad was because it drowned out the barking noise. When I asked her about medication, it triggered a second thing that had changed. The brand name stimulant medication that she took for her ADHD was replaced by a generic in spring 2024. Theoretically, the generics are very similar to the brand name products, except possibly for fillers. However, when Frances researched this medication after our reading, she discovered there were a lot of people saying that they found that the generic was significantly less effective than the brand name. Weird as it sounds, Frances is one of a subset of people with ADHD who finds that stimulants actually help her sleep, so this less effective medication reduced the quality of her sleep. I'm always amazed at the amount of information that we can get from a single tarot card. In this case, the Fool helped us pinpoint 3 possible causes of Frances's insomnia: being fixated on political news, trying to drown out a barking dog, and a change in medication. I'm happy to report that Frances is back to sleeping through the night. She credits this to not watching political news, adding a white noise machine and earplugs, and switching back to a brand name stimulant. Card number 2, the 8 of Cups, looked at what new habit can support Frances getting better sleep. The first thing to notice is that this card is set during a lunar eclipse, so there would be very little light. My first recommendation is that Frances get room darkening shades so that her room is very dark. The 8 of Cups is a card about walking away from things that are no longer serving you. Since cups are about emotions and the break in the cups looks like Frances is missing something in her life, I think this is keeping her up at night. Also notice that the water is not flowing, so I think that Frances feels stuck and is thinking about how she can move on in her life. Cups can also be about love, and I don't believe that Frances's current partner, who is a member of our family, is making her happy anymore. I think this is the crux of what is keeping Frances up at night, and I think the habit she needs to cultivate is finding professional help, such as a therapist or a lawyer, to help her figure out whether or not she wants to remain in her marriage. Card number 3, the reverse 3 of Cups, looked at how Frances could incorporate new habits into her routine. I've always been somebody who is an early to bed, early to rise kind of person. Back when I was in college, my roommates would be partying until 4 a.m., and I'd be in bed at 10 o'clock reading. This is the message from the reversed 3 of Cups, and that is that Frances needs to be more like me and do the opposite of partying. She needs to establish a strict bedtime routine, limit alcohol, and not get all revved up before bed, and instead focus on herself, not on other people in her lives. These actions, together with those we discussed in the Fool and the 8 of Cups, will help Frances to continue getting a good night's sleep. The second reading, which I will link to below, helped Martin figure out whether he should stay at his current job or look elsewhere. Card number 1, the Lovers, showed the benefits of Martin staying at his current job. Card number 2, the Tower, shows the downside of Martin staying at his current job. And card number 3, the Fool, showed the overall outcome if Martin stays at his current job. The Lovers card is not just about finding a romantic partner. In this case, I believe we are seeing Martin with one of his colleagues. They are at the same level, which is one of the many things that Martin likes about his workplace. There's not a lot of hierarchy. People get along. People collaborate and they pitch in as needed. I do see that the Archangel Raphael is blocking out the sun, which represents clarity. Instead, the employees find themselves under cloud cover, which can indicate confusion or things that can't be seen. I believe that Archangel Raphael is hiding the truth from the employees. So, despite the fact that everything looks hunky-dory to Martin and he believes the company is doing well, it's really not. Card number 2, the Tower, shows the downside of Martin staying at his current job. The Tower is about shocking, unexpected changes that create upheaval in your life, such as a job loss. In the Tower, we can see a stone watchtower on a mountaintop. There are no doors and 3 tall windows. So theoretically, this should be extremely safe. Yet it must have been built on a very shaky foundation if a single lightning bolt could destroy it. This tells me that Martin should not stay at his current job because it will not be around much longer. The company is not on firm ground. Martin and his co-workers will be forced to exit, likely very quickly, and Martin needs to leave when he can. Card number 3, the Fool, shows the overall outcome if Martin stays at his current job. One of the most obvious meanings of the Fool is that something is foolish, and I think that Martin staying at his current job would be a foolish decision. One of the first things about the Fool is that he is very naive and is looking toward the past, so Martin may not realize that his company is not the same as it was in the past. The previous Tower card indicated that Martin's company was not doing well. As we can see with the Fool, Martin is focused on the sunny skies above him. He doesn't notice that he's ready to step off a cliff and plunge into the frigid waters below, and he's not heeding the warning of the dog who is with him. Hills and mountains are about challenges, and Martin is not paying attention to those either. This tells me that if Martin stays with his current employer, he would not realize that the company was having difficulties. Instead, he'd continue on his merry way and be blindsided when the company went down in flames. The Fool is about new beginnings. I think that if Martin stays at his current job, he will experience beginning again. He'll need to embrace change and do something that is outside his comfort zone. It might be a new position, working with new people, or working at a new location. All of the things he's enjoyed about his current job could potentially be gone, and he'd need to figure out new ways to find enjoyment in his work. However, I think it's more likely, given what we saw in the previous Tower card, that Martin will lose his job and be forced to look for a new one after some kind of a catastrophic event. And because he's so naive, Martin hasn't put in any work towards finding new employment. Something else to look at is the small satchel that the Fool is carrying. He doesn't have a lot of possessions. I think this could indicate that Martin would not have a lot left after the company folded. In addition to losing his paycheck, Martin would lose his benefits such as health insurance. Even though he's focused on the sunny skies, Martin could end up in a pretty precarious situation financially. Overall, the Fool indicates that Martin will not do well if he stays at his current job. The best case scenario is that he'll get reassigned and just lose the camaraderie of his current position. The worst and most likely scenario is that the company will not exist and Martin is not prepared to find another job. In our final reading, we'll talk about the reversed Fool. But first, if you're getting benefit from this video, I hope you'll take a moment to subscribe. It's free for you and you'll get notified when I post videos so you won't miss anything. It will also help me to grow this channel. Now let's talk about our final reading. It's called Fiancé Flip-Flop. Why did my fiancé suddenly stop caring about me? I've linked to the full reading below. This question was posted anonymously online by a woman I will call Christine. She's scheduled to get married in 3 months and recently bought a house with her fiancé. Christine and her fiancé have been together for 10 years, and she just discovered that, during the entire time, he'd been sexting women online. Despite this, Christine still loves him. Her question was, should I proceed with my wedding despite my fiancé's betrayal? Card number 1, the Four of Wands, looked at the course of action that Christine should take that would be most beneficial. Card number 2, the reversed Fool, looks at the actions that Christine should avoid. And card number 3, the Six of Swords, looked at the likely outcome based on Christine taking the actions in the preceding cards. The Four of Wands looked at the course of action Christine should take that would be most beneficial. This is an interesting card that normally represents community, stability, and happy times, including weddings. I interpret this to mean that Christine's dreams for a happy marriage have been shattered, and she needs to do some soul searching about what she wants her life to look like. I think Christine needs to create a new sense of stability by leaning on her community and also on her inner strength. We'll look at the remaining cards to see what she chooses. Card number 2, the reversed Fool, looks at the actions that Christine should avoid. As we've discussed in the previous cards, the upright Fool is about beginning a new phase in life, being spontaneous, and taking action. The Fool is spontaneous and isn't analyzing the pros and cons on a spreadsheet. In the reverse position, the Fool is telling Christine to avoid making rash, impulsive decisions and to think things through carefully. In the upright position, the Fool is alone, with the exception of the dog. The reverse position is a message that Christine should not be alone. We see a support network in the previous card, and Christine needs to rely on them. I think this would include friends and family for emotional support, but also a therapist, attorney, and financial advisor to help her make the best possible decision. In the upright position, the Fool is carefree. After all, we see him on a remote mountaintop with only a small bag for luggage. The message of the reversed Fool is that Christine needs to put a lot of effort and focus into taking care of her own needs. Finally, the Fool in the upright position is about someone who is at the beginning of their journey. It is the first card in the major arcana. In the reverse position, it tells me that Christine's journey is over. She should avoid moving forward with her fiancé. Card number 3, the Six of Swords, looks at the likely outcome based on Christine's taking actions in the preceding cards. In this card, we see Christine moving forward. This is a message that Christine has accepted the reality of her past, which is very difficult, and is ready to move on. We see her leaving the choppy waters behind, which represent her painful emotions following her fiancé's betrayal, and she's moving towards calmer, more peaceful waters. I think that this outcome, while the right one, will be extremely difficult for Christine. It's interesting to note that this flat-bottomed boat, called a punt, was the kind of boat used to carry souls across the river Styx to the afterlife. While Christine is obviously still alive, her cloak can be a symbol of grief. I think that, while she knows that moving on is the best course of action, she is mourning the loss of the relationship with her fiancé. The Six of Swords can represent a metaphorical or a literal journey. For Christine, I believe it's both. I think it's likely that she will elect to move to a new location where she can begin her life again. We don't see any luggage in the boat, so she's shed many of the burdens from her relationship with her fiancé. I hope that seeing the Fool in these readings will help you interpret it when you're conducting a reading. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share what you've learned or your experience. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.